What's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Caldwell Painting Podcast. Today it's going to be a fun episode, something I'm really passionate about, cabinet coatings. But instead of just talking about professional coatings, actually getting involved into the DIY side of it, what kind of products you should be using if you're going to do it yourself, and also the products that you should not be using on your kitchen cabinets. So we're also talking about 2Ks and all the professional stuff as well. So it's going to be a fun episode. Stick around. Let's get to it. Do a podcast. All right, guys. Bart Caldwell here with the Caldwell Painting Podcast. Today's going to be a great episode. All right, we are talking about catalyzed 2K cabinet paints. We're talking about paints that you can just leave your cabinet doors hanging in your own kitchen and just brush it on, maybe a level out. But yeah, also a little bit about the equipment that we use, a little insight into our process. But I figure most of y'all are really going to be interested in, painting these cabinets yourself. So there's a couple products out there that we would recommend. That's what we're going to talk about today. We actually had somebody bring in a DIY job that they started on themselves, and it's not looking so good. So if you're on YouTube, watching this on YouTube, you can see it if you're driving down your car, sitting at your office, listening to the podcast. Definitely check out the video version of this, and you'll be able to see some of the examples that we got going. So what I'm holding up here in front of me is a vibrantly painted blue cabinet door. These are brand new doors. They wanted to tackle this project themselves. They were on, I think he said they was actually on YouTube. Looking around and seeing how to paint your own cabinets. So what happened with this, it's a combination of a brushed and rolled cabinet on a brand new door. The paint that he was using, it's not a paint that I'm familiar with. It's a brand I'm definitely familiar with from Behr. And Behr has a new cabinet coating. I tell you, putting my fingernail to this, it's pretty gummy. It's soft. I don't know how they're calling this a cabinet coating. But also, if you can see it, look at it. Now, blue's a really hard color to get to cover anyway. But this is just kind of some sloppy work. So one of the issues, like with the DIY type paints, you'll start towing a line between something that dries quick and something that levels. And what leveling means is how close, or when that paint's wet, how gravity pulls it down and how it levels out and tries to get you closer and closer to that sprayed looking finish. Now, I hadn't found anything on the market yet that you can brush on, professionally brush on, that levels out like a sprayed finish. If there is something out there that you want us to check out, definitely put that in the comment section. Because that would be some pretty exciting information to have if there was a product that we could brush on. But as far as if you want to tackle this project yourself, there's some great products out there. None of them that I would recommend are cheap, but one of the best for like a DIY project that I'd recommend is actually this one over here. It's a Sherwin Williams product. It's called Emerald Urethane. Now the Emerald line may be a little bit misleading. It's because it's an interior paint, it's an exterior paint. And we really don't recommend using those type of paints on cabinets or trim. But the Emerald Urethane came out, I think it was like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, as a trim and cabinet paint that we actually really like. It's not something that we use. We use it on trim a lot. But what we love about it is how it levels out. So the workability on it is very DIY friendly. It's not something that's drying quick. It's something that's taking its time to dry. And, the longer something takes to dry, usually the more it levels out. I've actually seen quite a few professional painters using this on cabinets. And honestly, it's because as a professional painter or as a painter, when you put this on cabinets, the way that it levels out makes you look like a really good painter. It'll take brush finishes and make them look really good. Obviously not like a sprayed finish, but if you spray it, it levels out even better and just honestly just kind of flows like butter. So when you spray emerald urethane, you're going to love the results that you get. As long as you know how to use a spray rig, you should be in good shape. So the way that I would recommend using emerald urethane, using a dedicated primer first. So getting into primers, we're going to do another video for that, talking about different primers to use, because it depends on what your surface is leading up to it that you're trying to get the paint to stick to. Is it an oil base? Is it a polyurethane? Is it raw wood? Is it latex? If your cabinets are previously painted. So there's a lot of variables, and that's honestly worth a whole episode to itself. But so if you're using the correct primer, do your research on it, and you go over it with the emerald urethane, you brush it. The downside to it is it takes a little bit longer to dry. So in a production standpoint, you're going to have wet paint sitting in your garage or your kitchen for longer. And what can happen is you'll start getting more dust, potentially getting stuck in that paint and sticking to your finished coating. Now, the other thing that is kind of a strike against the emerald urethane is, since there's no catalyzer with it, and we'll talk about catalyzers like on the Renner and the General Finishes, and actually another Sherwin Williams product as well, it doesn't get as hard. So the paint kind of stays a little bit more flexy. Now, it is a hybrid oil, so it's going to keep curing harder and harder, but it's not going to get to that point even after its full cure cycle, or say after 2 months of curing. It's not going to get nearly as hard as something like a Renner 2K or General Finishes or Gallery Series with the crosslinker. But that may be okay, because once you start getting into two-part paints, it starts getting more complicated. You're usually mixing this stuff on a gram scale, which we don't really recommend for the typical DIYer. The next product that I want to talk about, I actually don't have it on the table in front of me, is a Benjamin Moore product called Advance. Advance is similar to an emerald urethane. It takes forever to dry, so if you're flipping your cabinets, and what I mean by that is if you're spraying your cabinets flat, letting them dry, and then flipping them over, lots of times those hybrid oil and those urethanes, they'll have a tendency to stick after you flip them, even after a couple days, depending on your climate. They may stick or leave little marks on your finish side. So that's what kills you from a production standpoint, because in our cabinet shop, we want something that we can sand on quick to smooth it out, get ready for that next coat. We can flip it over, put it in our drying racks quick, and get on to the next job. And that's where a lot of those catalyzers and hardeners come in. They help it dry quicker. But again, that starts getting into a little bit more that professional use level. Something that you're usually doing in a spray booth in a dedicated shop, more so than your garage. So the next thing that I want to talk about, there's another one, Sherwin Williams makes it, called Chem Aqua. Chem Aqua, years ago, we used it all the time. We loved it. It would dry quick, but I really only could recommend it for new cabinets, raw wood. We'd use their primer system, the Chem Aqua Surfacer. But it was a great product. It cured much harder than the urethane stuff. It had that kind of new paint cabinet feel, like that click when you touch it with your fingernails. The Chem Aqua we liked a lot. The one downside to the Chem Aqua is how it held up with water in kitchens and stuff. But even that was years of use. But yeah, we liked the Chem Aqua a lot. We could sand on it and it would powder up, usually in about an hour or two. It was great when we'd flip it. So it was really starting to get into that professional territory, if not fully in that professional use case territory. It was still a 1K, which means you didn't have to mix any catalyzers or hardeners or anything like that. You could mix a little distilled water into it, or if you needed to thin it. Maybe on hot days it would dry a little bit quick. But yeah, it was a great product, and it's a good one. I would recommend that to a little bit more of an experienced DIYer, because it levels out great. The downside, when I say experienced, is you cannot brush it. Some people, you can say you can brush it, and do touch-ups. Yeah, you can kind of get away with, touching up on like underneath the cabinet or on a frame or something, and not putting a whole lot of paint on. You can usually touch up some nicks or a little damaged pieces. But as far as like doing all your boxes, brushing it, I wouldn't recommend it. We never had very good luck with it. It dries really quick, so it starts getting really draggy, and leaves brush marks really bad. It doesn't level out when you brush or roll it. So I wouldn't recommend it for that use case. Now, let's stay on Sherwin Williams for a little bit. We're going to do a full product test review of this product, but in what we've done so far with some test pieces in the Sherwin Williams Gallery series, we've actually really liked. Now, I don't want to give too much away for the review, but yeah, we actually really like it as a 2K paint. Now, what I will say, now that we're fully into a 2K with using cross-linkers and stuff, and ionized water on that one, you can use vapor distilled water. I don't know if it's recommended, but for our testing, we use both vapor distilled and ionized water. I couldn't tell the difference. We weren't getting any kind of like contamination reaction or anything like that. But we actually really like the product. Now, you're going to have to spray it. That's the only way you're getting this. We're in full professional territory at this point. All of these want to be sprayed with, using HVLPs or even, some people using air-assisted airless. And the typical homeowner is not going to have that kind of equipment on the ready. They're not, but they may. If you working in the car body industry or something, then you're going to be off to a better start than others. But yeah, going into the professional series stuff, it's very expensive paint. We're north of $100 a gallon now, and trying to learn it at $100 a gallon. Adding these chemicals, and the hardeners, the catalyzers are expensive too. Like this can right here, I think it's like $80. So just to get started, you got a $130 gallon of paint, and that's if your local store carries it. And then an $80 gallon of hardener, or a quart of hardener, you're over $200, and you just have 1 gallon. Your project may need 3 gallons. So it may get very expensive to learn. And the way... Well, I know you're going to be more than that, because you got to use their dedicated primer too. That's also catalyzed. So, that's why I would kind of steer DIYers away from these type of products, because they can be very finicky. If you get something wrong, if you have water in your air system, or the paint that you're going over, or the finish you're going over, sometimes can cause a reaction and ruin your paint and your finish then too. But so this year has actually been really exciting as far as like professional cabinet coatings. General Finishes came out with the Enduro series. It's a catalyzed paint as well. It comes in a clear coat system. It comes in a full gloss. Now I think the sheen on their full gloss, I want to say, is like a 72 sheen. We're about to talk about sheens a little bit more here in a second, or like the full gloss sheens here in a second. And I think the Gallery series goes up to a semi-gloss. The Renner goes up to a semi-gloss, at least in the products that we use. Go up to, in the 851 series, goes up to a semi-gloss. Those are great products. One, for their durability. They cure really hard. They hold up to chemicals. They hold up to water in the house. The downside is the price, and how tough they are, and the learning curve that it takes to install them. So, and also controlling the environment. So now the next thing I want to talk about, just real quick, because this is probably one of the most finickiest cabinet paints or front door paint or whatever you're using it on the market, and that's the Fine Paints of Europe Holland Lac in the Brilliant. Now it's a 98 sheen. It's going after a mirror. Every single imperfection that's in your surface, be it a cabinet door, front door, trim, it's going to show up. Yeah, it's a tough product. The learning curve on it is steep. Even after you feel like you've been through the learning curve, it always seems to throw something else at you that can be frustrating at times. But I've seen people finish furniture in their garages with it. You'll probably see them a lot on Pinterest or Instagram, and lots of times for the DIYer with those furnitures, those pieces that they finish with the 98 sheen, they don't always get too close to the finished product, and it's because one, it takes forever to dry. It is a true oil-based paint, and because it takes so long to dry, dust has a lot of time to land on it and to settle into that paint. And that can be very frustrating. Also, the fighting things like orange peel or just all sorts of stuff with the Holland Lac. For a DIYer, if you've never used it before and you're just dead set on using the product, I'd recommend brushing it. You can brush it. I'd recommend using their primer as well. And what's really cool about their primer, if you're going for the high gloss finish, their primer is actually like a very shiny satin, maybe even a semi-gloss primer. So you can see all those imperfections and do your sanding, your filling, whatever you got to do before you're building up to your finish coats. And when we use it, honestly, usually we're using typically about 3 coats of primer. Working out every imperfection, but also to get that build of that color. And then, we've had front doors go 7, 8, I think maybe even 9 coats of finish paint on it. Because it seems like something always happens, or, we keep getting these imperfections, or a new dimple shows up in the wood that we didn't catch before. So yeah, I think too the other hard part for DIYers with the Holland Lac, even professional painters with the Holland Lac, when you're experimenting with it, a quart of this stuff's over $100. It's very expensive, and same with the primer. So you're starting off with a quart of finish paint and a quart of primer, and you're already hovering around $200 to then go figure it out. And it's definitely a journey. I'm not saying DIYers can't figure out Holland Lac 98 sheen and stuff, but it's definitely an expensive journey, but a fun one. So if you're refinishing furniture, that could definitely be something to look at. But as far as dry times, yeah, I mean, you're looking at 24 hours plus, depending on your climate, before you're sanding on this stuff, before you're ready to recoat. So if you're going 8 coats, of finish, or 10 coats, 12 coats, including primer, and you're 24 hours before you can start sanding on it, or you're in for an event. It's going to take you some time before between each coat. So definitely a fun journey, but the finished product of that, it's a mirror-like finish, and it's something really cool. In the painting industry, it's something pretty special that it can be really cool for the right use cases. So yeah, I mean, as far as there's another category of cabinet paints. We don't use it anymore, but getting into like the solvent-based paints, we've kind of pulled away from that. A lot of states don't actually even allow the use of solvent-based paints anymore. But I do like solvent-based. You can usually get into a paint that dries pretty quick, ready to sand. It's just a strong chemical. Definitely don't recommend solvent-based cabinet coatings for the DIYer. And I would say if you are a professional cabinet coat company or finish shop, I know a lot of the cabinet shops are switching over to water-based, like your Renners. There's also another one called Malaysi that's very similar to Renner, both from Italy. If you're holding off making the jump to the water-based stuff, it is a little bit different, a little bit different process than the solvent-based stuff. But once you make the jump, definitely highly recommend making that jump over to water-based stuff. Your guys and girls will be much more thankful that you did, and they'll go home feeling much better every night. So definitely make that jump. You're not really, in my opinion, sacrificing much when you're getting into to the paint, to the solid pigmented stuff. Now the stains and clear coats, little different story. Not going to lie, in the water-based stuff. But it's coming along. You can get the water-based clear coats in the Enduro, in the 2K now in a water-base. Not necessarily as shiny. The sheen's a little bit down on it, but it's shiny enough. But too, if you're wanting to go full gloss, Holland like 98 sheen, it's an oil-based product. So definitely going to have to wear some PPE in the booth for that kind of stuff. If you're using it in-house, make sure there's no open flames. So, but yeah, beyond that, water-based is primarily what we shoot. 2K, we'll use Emerald Urethane. We'll use the Benjamin Moore Advance for trim and stuff. We still like that product, those products for trim, but don't love them for a professional heavy-wearing cabinet coating. We typically try and steer clients of ours over to Renner, General Finishes, Malaysi's, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, guys, I guess really from, for as far as cabinet coatings, without doing any product reviews or anything like that, that's really going to be it for us today. So I really hope you enjoyed the show. If you're listening to the podcast, you can definitely go to our YouTube channel, check that out, and we've got some samples and examples and some more fun stuff over there. So guys, until next time, I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you soon.